Soraya, it's Jeff.
Hey!
So today, this episode is long overdue.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be talking to Steven Roback from Rain Parade, Viva Saturn. We've been wanting this guy on since the beginning. I mean, this guy is one of the main members of the Paisley Underground, and I'm really excited that we get a chance to talk to him. We're going to focus on the Viva Saturn stuff and a little bit about Rain Parade and some of the stuff that he's done since, so should be good.
I think this is going to be a great talk, so let's get started. Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff.
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage, Raspberry and Rhyme.
A podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tunes.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, a grooviar.
Let's get groovy. All right, well, let's give Steven a call.
Sounds good.
Hello.
Hello, Steven. This is Jeff.
And Soraya.
How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
All right. We are really excited to have you on this show today. We've been wanting to have you on for a while. It's come to the day where we finally get to talk to you. So we have a few questions that we wanted to ask you, mostly about Viva Saturn. We have a few other questions, too. I put together a little introduction, so I'm going to start off with that first.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate your interest in my musical heritage.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely fans. So Soraya and I are really ecstatic to have on today's episode a guy that I first met almost 35 years ago when Rain Parade were touring in support of their album Crashing Dream, an album that we covered in our episode number 18. But apart from Rain Parade, Steven has released material using the band name Viva Saturn, as well as a few songs as a solo artist. But on today's show, we'd like to focus on that material, as well as some of the background about his early days writing and recording music. So, Steven, we wanted to welcome you back to Paisley Stage, Raspberry and Rhyme. Yay!
Oh, well, thank you. Glad to be here. Honored to be here.
Thank you so much. We're honored to have you. But before we asked a couple questions, we wanted to note that there's actually some news, because we found out yesterday that the Rain Parade's debut album, Emergency Third Rail Power Trip, was released on yellow and red vinyl, I think by Real Gone Music. That's the site that I saw the album on, and I placed my order yesterday. So that's new news for us.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool. I have to admit, I don't know much about this release. I know it's the first vinyl reissue of Emergency, and I think it's a limited edition. I think it's meant to be kind of a purist release that just basically reissues the original album that as it was released in America, and so it's kind of has a purist aesthetic to it.
Nice. Yeah, according to the website, it's a limited edition of 1,000. So it looks like they only printed up 1,000 of these. So
I think so. So get yours now
Yes.
before it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks fantastic on the website. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, I'll get my copy next week. But then,
Yeah, I'm still
go ahead.
waiting to get mine.
Yeah. Oh,
It appears to have been just taken from I think it's the remastered version that was released a couple years ago.
Oh.
But to be honest, I haven't really been in the loop on this one, so I don't have much information.
yeah. All we know is that it's available. Go get it, and it's available from realgonemusic.com. And it looks like a limited run of
Right.
1,000. So everybody needs to get theirs now. And then there's also other news. Rain Parade's going to be playing Saturday, September 28th at the Makeout Room in San Francisco alongside Bark, which is Tim Lee's band. So that's something to look forward to also. And I think
that should be a good show.
at one point there was talk of an Oakland show the night before on Friday, but I believe that venue is closing, so that's no longer on the schedule, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The Octopus Lounge, which was kind of a cool little coffee place on the back streets of Oakland, it closed down.
I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds like it would have been a great show.
Yeah, but the one in San Francisco should be good. Definitely anyone who's a fan of Tim Lee and the Windbreakers and Matt Pucci and friends, come on down.
Which also include Steven Roback.
Yeah.
I think it just needs to be said. Steven, we want to start with a few questions that we had about your early days as a musician. And we've come to understand that before forming Rain Parade, you were in a band called The Unconscious with your brother David and Bangles lead singer and rhythm guitarist Susanna Hoffs. Can you tell or share with us and our listeners anything about this band and, how you guys came together?
Well, the band was basically David and Sue. At that time, they were living together in an apartment in Berkeley. We all ended up attending UC Berkeley at the same time. Somehow we all kind of crashed into Berkeley. And they were already putting together songs, some of which ended up actually on the Rainy Day album.
Oh.
Yeah, like I'll Keep It With Mine and I'll Be Your Mirror. And they, at that time I was playing both acoustic guitar and bass guitar, but that is actually kind of where I started playing bass guitar. My brother encouraged me because they needed a bass player. So they would invite me over to play bass with them, and that's pretty much what the band was. It was really David and Sue's thing, which I was invited into. And then we had a drummer who was this guy David West, who also went to Berkeley. But it was the origin of a lot of several things that later happened, which were Rain Parade, Bangles, Rainy Day, and so on.
Nice. Did you guys actually do any recordings together?
There might be some, outtakes, like live recordings, but it was pretty much like we were playing in the attic of an apartment.
Oh, okay.
And just kind of learn. For me anyway, I was sort of starting to learn how to, play bass, and very formative stages. But I have to really say it was really more David and Sue's thing.
Right. But it sounds like that's where you got your start playing, at least bass.
Yeah, it was definitely a good influence for me. Yeah.
Nice. So we've covered Rain Parade, which came about, it sounds like, as a result of The Unconscious. And we've covered Rain Parade throughout several episodes of our podcast. I wanted to ask, Steven, do you have any special memories of the early days of the band, or anything that you look back at fondly, or any highlights, anything that you remember about the early days of Rain Parade?
Let me see. Well, it was an exciting time in terms of music. We all kind of left Berkeley and migrated at different times in around 1981 or so, or 80, 81, back to Los Angeles. And what I remember is really, things like seeing the Bangs play for the first time at a party in Hollywood Hills, where they were just tremendous. I think they blew everybody away with their talent, and we could kind of see this band is worth watching, and they just were really exciting and having incredible harmonies, which everybody knows about. And then also, we holed up for a couple of years in a studio in Venice. We built we converted a house into a rehearsal studio on Marina Street, and pretty much the entire evolution of Rain Parade happened in this one little space. So that was cool. That was a really creative period. And of course, Rain Parade itself was actually founded by my brother, again, and Matt Pucci. And you probably know the story. I came a few months later after I got out of Berkeley. And then we built the studio, and it all happened from there.
Wow. That's really cool.
yeah, there's a lot more. And soon enough we started recording, and we did our first single, and then that led to us playing gigs, and then we met our friends like Green on Red and Southern Army, and the usual suspects, Paisley suspects.
Yes, yes.
See, no, that sounds like another band, the usual Paisley suspects.
Yeah.
So in talking about this early, highly creative period of the band, we had a follow-up question. So in addition to the debut, while the original components of the band were still together, Rain Parade releases the mini LP or EP, Explosions in the Glass Palace, as well as the previously mentioned Crashing Dream. And then eventually there's a release of Demolition, which included outtakes and unreleased material. And you've already let us know that perhaps for the unconscious, there's maybe something lingering. But besides this material from Demolition, from Explosions and Crashing Dream, are there any other studio recordings of Rain Parade from this time period that has remained unreleased? Is there anything that you've got kind of stored away?
Well, there are. Short answer is yes. There are several, outtakes of both recorded and live material that have not been released, and hopefully some point, that stuff will see the light of day. There's a few cool songs. I mean, we actually have some outtakes that of tracks that never made it onto albums. Some of them are incredibly raw, maybe barely listenable, and others are actually more like kind of cool, production studio kind of demos. So there's some of that stuff out there. I don't know, when or how it might come out, but I hope at some point that it is able to.
Yeah, I hope so too. That would be great. Let's move beyond Rain Parade now, and let's start talking about Viva Saturn. So from what we can tell, you started recording music using that band name in about 1988, and eventually releasing the eponymously titled EP on Pat Thomas's Heyday Records. I think in 89, that first mini LP or EP came out. Can you tell us about the band's lineup on that first record and what led to the point where you decided to form Viva Saturn?
Yeah, so Viva Saturn actually started kind of very informally. Rain Parade kind of took a break. We didn't know if we'd come back to it or not. And I just kept writing songs, and I had some songs I had written during Rain Parade, and I just decided to start recording them. Actually, when I think I got together at that time was with John Thoman and Will Glenn. We put together a couple tracks. I think we were even playing around with the drum machine. We didn't have a drummer at that time. And I had a couple acoustic tracks. And we actually went into Radio Tokyo, which was still a functioning studio at that time, nice, where Rain Parade recorded our first single. I think we laid down 3 tracks. And from that, I think Old World was one of them.
The old world is dead and gone. They set it up to knock it down. The young man knows what he gets. Some cigarettes and a kick in the head. The old world is out of touch. You hurt the people you love so much, but that's just something to kill the pain. Trade your trouble in for shame. You're only tempting fate. the alley. Your world is going up the chimney, and he's out in the icy street in the morning. Mother's gonna kick her habit. She'll be home on time. The old world is out of time. The broken knives and wretched smiles. This old world, no man trash. A puff of smoke and it all goes past. There's a crowd that goes up from the alley. Your world is going up the chimney. Mother's gonna kick her habit. She'll be home on time. She'll be home on time. She'll be home on time.
That's one of my favorite from that recording session. Let's see what else we did. Wild Town, which was kind of cool. It's kind of the story of, well, it's basically about LA. We were kind of into reading those Jim Thompson pulp fiction crime novels at the time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of burned the title from one of his books, and it just captured that feel, that kind of endless pulsing madness of LA, you know, and the kind of unforgiving nature of Hollywood and the music business. But I think Jack Waterson laid down an amazing slide guitar on that, so that was a really memorable track.
Right, yeah. That's great.
That was like the first part of the album. Later, I went in with a couple of other people that I'd been working with in Rain Parade, like Carlo Nuccio, the drummer, to lay down a couple more rock tunes. So that album has kind of an acoustic-y, it sort of has two different personalities. It has sort of acoustic-y side to it, and then it has kind of rocking experimental side, where we did a lot of exploring of different instrumentations and different sort of production methods.
This release is so unique. It coming out on Heyday Records. What was it like in those early days of working with Pat Thomas and Heyday in San Francisco alongside Barbara Manning and Chris Kakavas? What was this community of artists like at this time?
Yeah, so San Francisco, it's kind of funny. So we had all migrated back to LA. So we're from LA. I was from LA originally, me and my brother. And we all ended up in Berkeley, and then we all went back to LA during the sort of, you know, Paisley Underground early 80 days. And then we all kind of migrated, and so some of us migrated back to San Francisco. So in 88, 89, San Francisco had this kind of flourishing folk sort of acoustic scene going on. And Pat Thomas was kind of a bit of a promoter, journalist, impresario, record label, you know, sort of aspiring record label owner. So we hooked up, and I had some material to release, which was Viva Saturn. And he was working with several other artists like Barbara Manning and Sonia Hunter and some other people. And I guess he was able to secure a distribution deal with Rough Trade. So we kind of together, I was sort of a very silent partner in the founding of Heyday Records. But we kind of did that together. The scene in San Francisco was actually pretty cool for a couple of years there. There was a lot of, you know, camaraderie. There were a few standout venues like the Albion in the Mission, and I think the Makeout Room came a little bit later. And then there was the Paradise Lounge. I don't know if you guys know about any of these venues, but
I know Makeout Room. Yeah.
Yeah, that's still around, actually. Anyway, it was definitely another one of those kind of mutually supportive musical scenes, more based around kind of an acoustic folk aesthetic.
Sounds like an exciting time to be an artist and having support from fellow artists there. I did have a couple questions about the EP, and I think you answered a few of them. So I was wondering, on the album credits, it notes that some of it was recorded at Radio Tokyo, which I have a fondness for, and Paramount Studios. But it sounds like maybe the second side was recorded at Radio Tokyo, and maybe the first side was recorded at Paramount.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
or roughly.
The more rocking stuff was
Paramount. Right. And then I did notice that Wild Town was the only song that you had a co-write with, and that was Will Glenn. And you mentioned a little bit about taking the title from the crime novel. How did you guys go about co-writing that song?
Pretty much like every other song, every other co-written song, somebody writes one part, and then somebody else writes a counterpart. If I recall, Will Glenn had this cool, I think it was like a K guitar. It was like a cheap guitar. I think they were from Sears originally.
Oh, nice.
But he had this one guitar. It was super cheap, and he just started strumming this really cool ringing rhythm part. And it was just kind of spontaneous, I think. From that, I came up with a bass part and started singing. And voila! That's pretty much how most songs are born.
Nice.
But that one was uniquely cool because Will was such a talented musician. I really loved working with him. He had a unique ability to inspire people's musical abilities, and he always had an interesting take. So he, I'm sure that chord that he was playing was, not a straight G chord. It was kind of probably has some really, if I recall, it has some interesting harmonics in it. So that's kind of where the whole thing came from. It was kind of the feel and the vibe of. It seemed to capture the times in LA at that time.
Nice.
Kind of dark and moody, kind of film noirish.
I love the image that he's painted, because now it just kind of informs how I'm going to listen to it once again.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. Steven, I want to ask you about the recording of Sound Mind. So in 1992, you released the band's first full-length album, Sound Mind, on Heyday Records, in cooperation with the Spirit Music Industries label in the U.S. and on Normal in Europe. And what was interesting for us was looking at the credits, looking at all these other contributors. So the album credits show that you had help from John Thoman, Matt Gucci, Ross Inden from the Leopards, Green on Reds, Jack Watterson, and Chris Kakovas, Carlo Nuccio from Continental Drifters, and even Barbara Manning adding some vocals. I mean, Jeff, wouldn't you say that's a pretty hefty list?
Yeah, it's a super group.
Literally, that is a super group.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about how this recording came about and all these additional artistic and creative minds that helped out. I mean, this is really, it really stands out.
Yeah, it's interesting you notice that. So Viva Saturn, there was never like a master plan for rock success with Viva Saturn. It was more of like a little bit more informal, kind of exclusively kind of a recording project, and as maybe a vehicle for my songwriting or some songwriting I did with Matt. And the production process was really different than with Rain Parade. With Rain Parade, we were always very super meticulous with our arranging and production. But with Viva Saturn, in a more casual way, I would bring, after I had a song, I would bring people into the studio and in different configurations, and we would lay down a lot of raw tracks. Of course, always at the core of that was me and John Thoman. He had a really important role in all the Viva Saturn work. Great guitar players, And then also later, Matt didn't play so much with us live, but he did contribute to a lot of the production, and he was probably at the majority of studio sessions in the Soundmind and later Brightside recordings. But anyway, we bring people in the studio that lay down a lot of raw tracks, and I would kind of end up sifting through and identifying the cool stuff that people, laid down, and then kind of mix it together. That's especially true for Soundmind. So that's why I think that album has a much looser, kind of more, reaching quality to it. These had to become a bit more of a real band later in the Brightside era, when we actually went on a couple of tours and stuff. But that Soundmind period was really experimental. I was exploring the different ways of producing music. And it was very sort of, letting people have sort of free reign to do what they wanted, and then trying to identify what they did that was cool and put it all together.
I love that. I love how you went about putting that together. It just makes for a great sound on that record, Soundmind. Viva Saturn, where did that name come from?
It just kind of popped into my head one day. I like to say it has a ring to it.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Both literarily and literally.
I love it. Yeah, it sounds great. There's a couple of standout tracks for me on Soundmind, but one of my favorites is Suicidal Lamb. and you have Barbara Manning singing background vocal. But I did want to ask you, so in the chorus you sing Mom Don't Understand, the trigger happy suicidal lamb.
Talk is cheap. You can get it in the middle of your sleep. First flight to Moscow, it's just like the middle of New York now. Time marches on. Before you get the word has gotten wrong. First flight to Frankfurt. The boys are really, really talking some dirt. Mom don't understand the trigger happy suicidal lamb. On. Before you get the word has gotten wrong. First flight to Moscow. I heard the word on Radio Martina. Mom don't understand the trigger happy suicidal lamb. Mom don't understand trigger happy suicidal lamb.
Can you tell us a story about what inspired you to write that particular song?
Yeah, this was like in the days, the first Gulf War, like in the very early 90s. There was definitely like a new generation of kids coming up who were very enthusiastic about going to war. And if I recall, the song was kind of influenced by their kind of willingness to maybe throw themselves, in the line of fire, whereas prior generation, maybe the 60s generation, was a little bit more anti-war, and it was kind of about this transition or anyway, the coming of age of a new generation who maybe, who was willing to sacrifice their lives. So I just remember there being sensing that that there was a real gap in understanding, kind of like the different, like in the 60s, it used to be the kids were anti-war and the parents were like, why the hell don't you go to Vietnam? This was kind of like the reverse. This was like, this next generation was like, I'm ready to go to war. and the parents couldn't understand why.
Yeah, there was definitely a shift for sure. I recall those times.
Yeah. In fact, several of the songs on that record are influenced by that period. Also, that was right after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Right.
Yeah, so it was like also kind of about the really rapidly shifting reality from like the Soviet Union being this impenetrable edifice that nobody could visit to suddenly it being an open country and being just the same as people realizing, it's the same here. It's the same everywhere, People are the same everywhere.
Nice.
With all the good things and bad things. Yeah. Those are the main themes in that song. But they're also across the record, too.
I love that insight.
And I have a question about a song, which I'll get to in a minute, but I want to talk about the single Bright Side. In 1993, the single Bright Side, that also included a B-side, Sudden Rain, is issued as part of the Rough Trade Single Club in the UK. And on the release, the artist is listed as Steven Roback. And there were about 50 singles that were released as part of the Rough Trade Singles Club.
I'm all in roses, I'm out on the vine. I found my April in the middle of your eyes. In a bed of violet, I'll open my eyelids. I just sit in the dark room and look on the bright side. In the yellow taxi, it's nice in the backseat. I just pay the driver to go down the side street. When I hear the sirens, I go down. I just sit in the park and look at the pigeons. It's all behind me. No one can It's all behind me anyhow. No one can follow where we go. The helicopter's flying over my rooftop. It shines a spotlight down into my building. Can you see I'm dreaming, or am I just scheming? I just sit in the dark and look on the bright side. It's all behind me. No one can follow where we go. It's all behind me. No one can follow where we go. No one can
We were curious as to, were you contacted to be a part of this, or how did it come about for Steven Roback to release this thing?
Let's see. So I think Rough Trade, maybe even through Pat Thompson. I don't remember exactly, but I think they contacted me and sort of invited me to participate. And the song Brightside, actually, which eventually ended up being the title track to the album Brightside, the Viva Saturn album. That song actually is another one of these songs that predates Viva Saturn. So it was appropriate to release it under my own name, because even though Matt helped me record it, it wasn't really like a Viva Saturn type project initially. It was more like a solo thing.
Okay.
That song has some interesting, is kind of interesting too. If I recall, came up with it when I was living in Palms in LA. Mm-hmm. And LA has this, constant hovering, like police helicopters hovering over the city.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember being literally the song is like the helicopters flying over my rooftop. He shines a spotlight down into my building. Can you see I'm dreaming, or am I just sleeping? I just sit in the dark and look at the bright side. I mean, it's literally about feeling like you're in a concentration camp almost, and trying to find a way to escape, the madness of these helicopters hovering over your buildings, looking for criminals.
Wow.
So that's kind of the background story on that one.
Wow.
Woo. Okay, just give me a minute. Just give me a minute, because that puts that song in a very it puts it in a different no pun intended, puts it in a different light. Okay, so let me shift for a second, because I swear I'm going to get to the question that I have about one particular song, but I do want to ask. In a few years later, in 1995, you released the band's last release, Brightside, on Restless Records, which was a subsidiary of Enigma Records. How did the connection with Restless, how did you come to sign with Restless to release Brightside?
That connection was totally through Bill Hine, who was the founder of Enigma Records. Mm-hmm. And he signed the Rain Parade's first 2 albums. And we remained friends, and I sent him a copy of the prospective tracks for Brightside, and he seemed to really love it. So I think he actually was still part. So Restless actually was basically Enigma became Restless. I don't know the details of their business arrangement, but essentially Restless inherited. I believe they inherited the Enigma catalog, or part of it. The part of it that wasn't bought by Capitol Records at some point. But not really clear on all the details. But basically, that was the same connection through Bill Hine that signed the Rain Parade. So it came directly out of that same sort of lineage.
Nice.
And they just seemed to like the album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
Yes.
So, Soraya, did you want to ask your question about a specific song, or?
You know what? I'm going to let you start, because you and I seem to have bookend questions. You about the beginning and me about the end, so.
Okay. All right. Well, my question was about Send a Message. So this is a song that starts off Brightside, and I believe that this was a co-write with Matt, and it definitely has his signature guitar sound on it. I think it's Matt. It could be John, I guess. But was this song specifically written for Viva Saturn, or could have this been written as a Rain Parade song?
It's just 100 miles from Birmingham to Jackson. So if you get broken down, you know you won't be left hung out. Send a message on the telephone, all around the world, on the satellite. It's just a half a smile across the room to someone. So if you need a friend, you just have to be one. Send a message on the telephone, all around the world, on the radio. Send a message.
How did Send a Message come about?
Send a Message was a song that I came up with originally, and then Matt hugely contributed to. I think he wrote some lyrics and came up with that as you said, stellar signature guitar, and also John too. So I think it was definitely in the context of Viva Saturn, but the thing is that the core of Viva Saturn really is the same as the core of Rain Parade in later days, which is Matt, John, and myself, and there's a lot of similarities there. But the song "Send a Message" itself was also I mentioned about during that period, like the fall of the Soviet Union. The song itself is actually predates the internet a couple of years, and it was kind of about the boom of global communications in the early 90s. Specifically, it was about, I remember what was happening when I was writing it. The protests, the Soviet Union was collapsing, and the Russian people started protesting in Moscow. And at that time, there was still a total blackout of communications with the West. But people were starting to communicate any way they could with the Western democracies. And they were using satellite phones, radios, television, everything. So it was totally, the song was about getting the message out using any form possible to communicate with the outside world. So even though it sent a message, which later became a meme for the internet, it actually kind of predates that a bit.
Wow. See, Soraya, this is what I love about our podcast, being able to find these nuggets of information about the background behind these songs and these bands, and I eat this stuff up. I love this. Steven, thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering these questions.
Well,
oh, sure, yeah.
I just want to piggyback on that, Jeff. So I traveled in the early 90s as part of a nonprofit group to Russia. And so everything Steven's talking about, I remember living through it. I was there during Perestroika and right after. And all of the global communication and the need to communicate in and out and the breakdown of that system. I mean, it's as if I'm reliving it. So thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for these anecdotes. Okay, now I want to get to my question, Steven. I swear, okay. Jeff, I can talk to Steven Roback all day long. Right. All day long. Yeah. All right. I want to ask about how Brightside ends with One for My Baby. Okay? This is where my question's going. So for those of you who may not know, and if you don't know, shame on you. You should know. But the song was originally written in 1943 by Harold Arlen and Johnny Mercer, recorded by Fred Astaire for a 1943 film, The Sky's the Limit, and later made popular by Frank Sinatra. But Steven, your version of the song is absolutely beautiful, and it wraps up the album.
It's 2:45. Running a place except you and me. So set 'em up, Joe. Got a little story I think you should know. Drinking, my friend, to the end of a brief episode. Make it one for my baby, and one more for the road. Got the routine, put another dollar feeling so bad. Can't you make the music easy inside? I could tell you a lot, but you've gotta be true to your code. Make it one for my baby, and one more for the road. You never know it, but buddy, I'm a kind of poet, and I got a lot of things I'd like to say. So when I'm gloomy, won't you listen to me till it's all tucked away? Well, that's how it goes. And Joe, I know you're getting anxious to close. So thanks for the cheer. I hope you didn't mind my bending your ear. But this torch that I found has gotta be drowned, or it soon might explode. Make it one for my baby, and one more for the road. Alone, it's so long. Alone, so long.
I'm beyond curious. Why this song? Why this cover?
Yeah, I know. It does seem like a little bit of an anomaly for us to be covering a Frank Sinatra popularized tune. Well, actually, the song came out of it was a tribute album that we were asked to, Matt and I were asked to contribute to. And it was a Frank Sinatra tribute. So a bunch of bands, most of them like San Francisco rock bands, but I think there were a few from other places too. And I think it was called Chairman of the Board.
Perfect.
The tribute album. Yeah. And it actually was pretty amazing. Some of these artists' takes on Sinatra tunes. But anyway, Matt and I, we sat down. It was in his living room, I think. He has a nice piano there. And he started playing One for My Baby, the piano part. And I guess he had he had learned it on his own. And he came up with like a really great rendition of it. And it was just obvious. So in kind of a role reversal, he ended up playing the piano on it. And I ended up singing it.
Wow.
But you think he has more of the loungy voice, more of the sort of smooth, slightly broader range. So we laid that down with him on piano and me singing. And then, if I recall, we laid down some kind of cool hypnotic distortion over it. And so we had that song, and it kind of just seemed we needed another track for Brightside. It seemed like it fit as a kind of a good closer at the bar.
It's a beautiful version. I love it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for asking about that, Soraya. I was always wondering about that. So, after Brightside, which was the last album that you released, I understand that there was an album recorded called Ships of Heaven in 1998. Other than a little bit what I read on Wikipedia, I don't know anything about Ships of Heaven. Can you tell us about that? Was there another album that was recorded?
Yes. It's not just a rumor. There actually is an album called Ships of Heaven, a full album that we recorded. And it was never released. So we kind of proceeded with recording it with the intention of having it come out, and then Restless at the last minute kind of decided that, for business reasons, they didn't want to release it, and it just went into their vault. And so they have it somewhere. It's like somewhere in one of their tape vaults. I don't even, I think I have a copy of it somewhere, but I think what's interesting about that album is that there are some really good tracks on there, and I hope someday that they're able to come out. The song Ships of Heaven itself is another one of the songs that kind of predates Viva Saturn. That also goes back to kind of late 80s, maybe even during Rain Parade. So what's interesting about Viva Saturn is each of the albums has kind of a touchstone track or keystone track, whatever you call it. Like the first EP has Old World, which was actually written, in Leeds while Rain Parade was touring. There's a whole story behind that one, which is interesting. We were touring. Our head roadie at that time was good friends with the Mission UK. I don't know if their band they were a branch off from Sisters of Mercy, I think. Anyway, we hooked up with them. They were really, really kind to us, and we ended up staying at their place and hanging out with them for a couple of days. And so Old World is really kind of about their life there, kind of getting up in the morning. Nobody's working. Everybody goes to the bar and gets drunk, to the pub. It's kind of this sort of hopelessness and sort of industrial decay of Northern England in the mid-'80s. Sort of sense of decay and hopelessness. So that's kind of what that song was about. So that was like one touchstone. And then the next, I guess, Soundmind had the song Soundmind, which was also kind of derived earlier. But then Brightside was also written earlier. And then Ships of Heaven, which is what I'm getting to. Ships of Heaven was also written earlier and later became the title track for that album. And in terms of the style, each of those songs kind of has a certain style. It's like a picking. It's based on kind of a electric acoustic finger picking part. You can hear it really clearly on Brightside if you listen to kind of the underlying picks guitar. So Ships of Heaven has a very similar feel to it as the song Brightside.
Nice.
I hope I'm making sense here. Not completely confusing.
No, absolutely.
It makes sense to me.
Yep, I'm totally following. Yeah, and
Okay.
I love that connection that connects all of those releases.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I hope that gets released someday.
Yeah, perhaps at some point. I haven't really pursued it, but we'll see. It's possible.
Okay. I want to follow up. Since Brightside, you've had a few songs show up on compilations. On our previous episode 13 that we called Covered in Paisley, we played your version of Neil Young's The Needle and the Damage Done. That was included on a Neil Young tribute released in 1999 entitled This Note's for You Too. You also have the song Black Shade of Blue on a 2007 compilation called You Hit Me With a Flower Redux. And finally, Purple Heart was part of the compilation With a Bow, a benefit for disaster relief in Japan. With a Bow, sorry. What can you tell us about these songs? In other words, how did you come to be involved in these projects?
Yeah, so well, the Neil Young cover song, the Needle and the Damage Done, was one of the first songs I learned to play on guitar.
Oh wow!
So when we were asked, or I was asked to contribute something to it, I thought, I wonder if anybody's going to actually try to take on that song, because it's kind of a little tricky, that guitar part. And what could I do to make it a little bit more interesting or different than the original, to make it more in sort of the hypnotic style of our work? So I just went into the studio, laid down the guitar part, and then I think we laid down some harmonium, some keyboards over it, which gave it a kind of a more haunting feel.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of was the secret ingredient on that cover.
I caught you knocking at my cellar door. I love you, baby, can I have some more?
I think what happened with both Black Shade of Blue and Purple Heart was, so one of those albums was released by Dan Poppy, who was the owner of Spirit Records. I think I just sent him the song and he loved it, and he put it on his the compilation for Japan Relief. And the other one I think I had also sent to Pat Thomas, and he loved that one too. So he put it on that other compilation you mentioned.
Nice.
Okay.
So those were both songs that post-dates Viva Saturn. Those were songs that come from a different period after Viva Saturn had been sort of permanently put to bed. Yeah, those are more from like the early 2000s. And I suppose that's perhaps a discussion for a later date. I can tell you about the work I've done since Viva Saturn, which is just quite a backlog of songs.
Nice. We're gonna have to get into that for sure. Part 2, Soraya.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
At some point, maybe some of them need to get released first, but we'll see.
That goes without saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna
Way
lose.
down the road.
I'm gonna lose some friends over my next comment, but The Needle and the Damage Done, your version, and I love Neil Young, and that's a great song, but that version is far superior to the original. Just it's so touching, and I didn't make the connection with the harmonium, but it's so dark at one point, and it's so touching. Man, that version is incredible. But to all my Neil Young loving friends, I love him, but man, this version is so much better. It's even better. I should say it's even better. Okay, so
Thanks. Yeah.
yeah, I really love that. That's a highlight on that Neil tribute, which is already a great tribute, by the way. But that is definitely a highlight on that record. But before we let you go, Steven, there was a couple more releases that you were connected with that I wanted to talk to you quickly about. And one was is Just Like Breathing, that your wife Missy did, and Lily White by Snowy, where you worked with Bonnie Evanson on. Can you, in fact...
Oh, yeah. Wow, you've really done your homework.
You actually produced both of those albums, right? Can you tell us about those two projects?
Yeah. So Just Like Breathing was a collection of songs that my ex-wife, Missy Roback, came up with. We actually wrote some of them together, but I've got to say she's a writer in her own right. She writes fiction, and she came up with just some great lyrics. And in a period of about 6 months, I was absolutely blown away by her output and these great songs she had written. So we decided to go record them, and we went into a studio here in San Francisco, and I assembled a few people, our mutual friends, and what emerged was that album, Just Like Breathing, which I think is really a beautiful album, and really stands up. It's more maybe a little bit more traditionally folk and folk rocky.
Yeah.
So that in contrast to the work I did with Bonnie Evenson, which was released under the title Snowy. She also is a good friend of mine, and she also came up with an amazing set of songs, and asked me to be involved in producing it and recording it. So during that couple-year period there, I was kind of focusing more on helping other people realize their musical goals and getting a little bit more involved in production. But the Snowy album is much more hypnotic and kind of has maybe a little bit more creative drumming, and that was provided by Tim Mooney, who co-produced that with me actually.
Oh wow!
Who has since, unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. But yeah, that was just another one of those really collaborations that transcended our initial vision of what it would be.
Yeah, both of those are great records. There's some great songs on both of those, and I definitely recommend people look into those for sure. So, Steven, before we let you go, so you can go eat lunch.
For now, because there will be a part 2.
Yeah, wrapping up part 1.
Okay.
So, are there any new songs that you've been working on, that you've been writing recently?
Yeah, there are. As I mentioned, I've got kind of a backlog of songs, and even though sometimes I try not to write, I try to say I'm sick of this, I don't want to do this anymore. Somehow I end up picking up the guitar and writing a song. Yeah,
it's in you and it needs to come out. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, it's like I don't know, a survival mechanism, I guess.
Well, I hope you keep doing it, because I love your songs. I absolutely love your songs and your delivery of the songs that you write.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. So maybe soon, new music, but definitely, Jeff, we need to have Steven back on and talk about more.
Yeah, definitely the post Viva Saturn period for sure. But what we wanted to focus on in this episode was namely the period from the late 80s into the later 90s, when these amazing records come out. And hopefully at some point the Ships of Heaven gets released, because that record sounds like it's ready to go. And man, I'm hoping somebody gets hold of that, puts it out. Yeah, that would be nice. Actually, the period, it's easy to remember. Viva Saturn lifespan is 89 to 98. Oh, nice. It looks good too. I was thinking maybe releasing a compilation, if I ever get around to it, called 89-98. Yeah, I like that. It's like a mirrored image, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. I don't know. I don't want to end this conversation, Jeff, at all. But at least Steven's opened the door for a second part, which we can then have. But Steven Roback, we cannot thank you enough for taking time to speak with us and let us gush about how much we really enjoy all the projects that you're involved in creatively. We're just huge fans.
Absolutely.
And thank you so so much.
Yes.
You're very welcome. I'm very happy to be here, and appreciate your kind words.
You got it. So part 2 soon.
Let's hope
He
so.
said it. I'm holding him too.
Let's hope so. All right, Steven. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, we'll talk
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
He's so dang cool.
Oh my gosh. I love this guy.
Whew.
I mean, in this community of Rain Parade talent, the talent is off the chart. Like, everybody connected with Rain Parade. They're all amazing. And Steven is such a vital part of their sound. I mean, not only songwriting, but his bass playing, his voice. He's just a critical part of that band. And then the music that he put out outside of the construct of Rain Parade is so good. I just love to hear his voice and his songwriting. I just really love. And, interestingly enough, and I'm glad that he gave us some context, other people are credited for playing bass on those Viva Saturn records. So he's, mainly doing like his guitar playing and singing and focusing on that on those records. So it was great to hear some of these stories, and I love the stories behind the songs. Oh my gosh, that's what this is all about for me.
I learned a lot today. And Steven Roback, his voice is really strong, and he's soft spoken, but when he speaks, it's got impact. And all of the things he's been involved in, it's just, yeah. I can't say enough. I really, really can't. And hearing the background of the songs, the inspiration for those songs, and the events, the global events that bring these songs to life. And I swear, as he was talking about, the minute he mentioned the breakdown of the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, it literally took me back, and I could remember being in Moscow at, early 90s. And I said, oh my gosh, he's talking about something that I actually remember and work through. So, whew.
That's the power of music, right? The power of music.
It gets you thinking, and it transports you in time, and good music is timeless. And that's what his music is. His music is timeless, and his writing is. Oof.
I couldn't say it any better.
I like the fact that he said there's new stuff that he's working on.
Mm-hmm.
But man, Jeff, I don't know. We may have to pull in an Ocean's 11 and go storm the vault and find that tape, because now, I mean, how can something that sound? I mean, the way he described it sounds very cohesive and ready to go. Simply that we haven't heard it yet. Now, although I'm suspicious, I wonder if someone has some sort of stolen, ill-gotten recording. But I really do hope it sees the light of day. It just deserves it.
Yeah, and I'm a bad guy, because as soon as he started talking about those tapes are sitting somewhere, I was thinking, I know some people. Some of them.
We know people who do things.
Yeah, some of them.
Yes.
Some of them are available now. They're no longer trapped by bars or concrete walls. So
people who are not afraid of the bright side.
Right, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Jeff. This was great.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites that we've done.
I mean, they're all a favorite. So I'm just really happy that we got a chance to chit chat with him.
And it's long overdue.
Way long overdue.
Yeah.
But even better, he said we can talk to him some more another time. So
Hopefully he wasn't just being nice to us. Hopefully that happens.
What? People don't do those things. Definitely not Steven Roback.
Yeah, you got me there.
All right. So, gente, how do we at?
Groove on, Paisley people.
Later.
Alright. I had a feeling that was going to be a good one.
You probably have a few of my cat's meows in the background.
I did.
FYI.
That's fine.
And,
I love those.
Fucking awesome. Fucking awesome.
All the dogs are in their yards, howling at the fires on the moon. I was happy to be astray, wondered how I got to be that way. Dark clouds rolling in my sunshines, wonder where they're going to bring me. Keeps on raining, keep on falling. I keep talking to myself, never listening, not quite knowing when it's makes no difference, right or wrong. I am on the upside of it all. Telling someone what they see. You are you, but someone else is me. Keeps on raining, keep on falling. I keep talking to myself, never listening, not quite knowing when it's over. Keep on raining, keep on falling. Keep on falling. Keep on falling.
Fucking awesome. Fucking awesome.